In June of 2024, I had the pleasure of having Randy Pobst drive my car on track at COTA. The time to beat for me was a 2:18.94. So after spending 8 months reprogramming my brain, installing a bunch of mods to my car, learning how to use these on track, I'm now at a place where I can actually turn times that are comparable to the time that he put down back in June. Welcome back to It's Track Time. In June of 2024, I had the pleasure of having Randy Pobst drive my car on track at COTA. He produced a very fast lap time with the car. The car at the time was pretty much bone stock. We had some huge R7s on it, and they were bigger than the factory tire sizes. And we also did a track alignment to get the proper camber and toe into the car. But beyond that, the car was bone stock. Randy produced a very fast time. It was the fastest time we'd ever seen with a GT4 RS out at COTA. And I also had a debriefing with him, so he talked to me about the bad behaviors of the car, and of course all of the data that I scoured through for the next couple weeks after that. From the analysis that I did and from the things he told me, I made a few changes to the car and to my driving techniques to try to match his lap time. So I was on a quest to see if I could match Randy's time. And I've been working at this for like 8 months now. And I think I've now got the recipe down to where I'm able to turn times that are comparable to the time that he put down back in June. So the first thing I did was analyze all of his lap times and all of his strategies on track. Looked at the differences between the techniques that I was using and the techniques he was using. Looked at where he was getting the most time on me. And then tried to see the technique he was using and mimic that. And I worked on it over the summer. We don't drive on the tracks in Texas because of the heat in the summer. So I sat on the simulator, worked through some of these techniques, and then came back in the fall trying to execute these on track. And these included going into turn 3 at full speed, punching all the way through to turn 4 at that same speed, scrubbing the brakes, and then going through the rest of the S's. I was actually scrubbing the speed before turn 3, and I needed to scrub the speed after turn 4. And so I had to reprogram my muscle memory over the summer on the simulator so that I could come back in the fall and execute that. It took some time, but I was able to do it. He was also hopping the curbs at turns 3, 4, and 5. And then he was scrubbing up against the edge of the curb at 6, which I was doing already. And then he was hopping the curb at 7, 8, and 9. And so in order to do that, I needed to either become super comfortable with letting the car get launched into the air and then catching it, which is what he was doing, or I had to make some changes to the car to make it more compliant. And I chose to make some changes to the car to make it more compliant, and now have adopted all the corner hopping that he was doing there on the curbs. I also adopted the shallower line that he did at turn 15. So I was taking a wider line out and then cutting back. And that was what I was taught as I was learning COTA. After watching the pros, though, they were taking this more shallow line through 15. And I noticed Randy was really good at it. So I did some experimentation with that on the simulator and then came back onto the track in the fall. And it made my lap time slower. And it took some time to develop that line to where I was actually able to get back to where I was before and then actually get some gains out of it. So I'm now using that shallower line on turn 15. And then the other place I needed to improve was to be more aggressive holding my speed through the carousel. So Randy was able to feel the grip a lot better than me. He was able to maximize his speed through the entire carousel. That's a long piece of the track. You've got the car loaded up through that whole piece, and you've got to get right to the edge of the grip. I've seen enough cars wreck there that I wasn't really excited about pushing really hard and experimenting. But then if you go to the simulator, you can't feel the grip, so it's not a good tool for trying to learn how to go faster on the carousel. So I have worked my way through it now, and I'm getting more aggressive on the carousel and able to hold my speed better. And so, and part of that plays into the next piece, which was to make some modifications to the car to make it more confidence inspiring so I could execute these driving techniques. And so the two big things that we did was first we went to Dundon and we picked up their MCS suspension upgrade. That allowed me to hop the curbs at 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, and 9, like Randy was doing, but without launching the car into the air and then trying to catch it. which is what he was basically doing the whole time. I didn't feel comfortable doing that, and by chilling out the car and making the suspension better and making it more compliant, I was able to jump the curbs now with my amateur driving skills. And then on top of that, we added aero. We put a bigger wing on the back. We put a bigger front splitter and then dive planes. The combination of those three made the car a lot more planted, which allowed me to drive a lot more aggressively through the carousel. It's not something that you just naturally feel. You have to then start trusting it and working your way up with faster and faster speeds and feeling the grip and feeling what the aero does for you. And it took a couple track weekends to build the trust in that, but now I can feel the downforce, and I can haul ass going into turn 3 and 4, and I can also go through the carousel much faster now. The time to beat for me was a 2:18.94, and that was the time set by Randy in June of 2024. At the time, the best lap time I had set was a 2:23.36. And that pretty much was the end of the summer for me, or the beginning of the summer for me. It was the end of the track season for me. And I put the car away for the summer and went and did other things. I came back late summer and we started putting on all of the Dundon components, modifying the car with the MCS and the aero upgrades that we talked about and all the suspension upgrades. As part of that, I took it over to Mike at Black Sheep, and he gave me a refined setup sheet that was kind of a blend of what Dundon wanted and what we already had on my car. So we'd already worked through all of the camber issues, and I had some problems with my tires cording on the outside. So we'd already dialed the camber up to about negative 3.6 degrees in the front. And then in the back, he elevated it up to negative 3. And then we had negative 1.2 millimeters of toe out in the front, and we had 3.5 millimeters of toe in the back. And that worked pretty well for me. So we went into the fall sessions with that setup. Ted took the car out. It was like in early October, and turned to 217. So that said, yeah, the car can do this now. I went and started working with the car and started learning the aero and learning these new components and the way the car felt now. And at the end of that day, it was a pretty hot day, and I ended up turning 2:21.71. So I was pretty happy with that. I'd knocked down some time. I wasn't still anywhere near Randy, but I at least was able to get a good step forward in my lap times. After that session and after that track weekend, we started looking at the boots again, because I showed you guys over the summer the boots on my car were warped. They actually overheated and produced a vacuum inside of them, which made them elongated. That was smacking on the wires coming out of the shocks, and eventually it wore through the insulation. The wires then shorted and caused suspension faults in the car. We were going to take those shocks out anyway, so we didn't deal with the issue at that point. We took the shocks out and put in the MCS ones and figured that, okay, we're done with that. These aren't electronic. They don't have any wires in them. I don't have to deal with that. Well, no. Actually, you now got the reservoir line coming out the bottom of the shock. And once again, these elongated boots were dangerously close to those reservoir lines. So we moved them out of the way as best we could to get through that October session, and then we had to deal with it going into the fall. So I took the car to the dealership. They said, yeah, we can replace that under warranty. Then after I got up underneath the car and started looking, they said, oh yeah, there's a lot of evidence of heat. I had over axle pipes over that last track season. The ceramic coating on them didn't work, and I eventually got a whole bunch of heat inside those wheel wells, and we had to do header wrap on them to try to cool them off. So likely that was what caused the problem with my boots, even though I've read other people having problems with these boots as well. So they said, yeah, no warranty on that. You need to cover that yourself. So we eventually said, okay, I was running out of time before my next track session in December, and I said, okay, the car's there. You guys pull the axles, replace the boots, and put the thing back together. So they did that, and they said, okay, there's not going to be any issues with the alignment, so we don't need to realign the car. And I said, you just pulled my axles off, and you're telling me that there's no change in alignment? And they said, no. There's no change of alignment. You're good. So I left the dealership, and that didn't feel right to me, so I took it to another shop that I'd worked with, because Mike at that point was all booked up. I took it to this other shop that I've worked with in the past, and they agreed to get this thing aligned before the track weekend. They put it up on their alignment rig, and they came up with these crazy values. So the values that I have here in pink are the values that they read, and the black values that I have on this alignment sheet are our target values. So other than the rear axle being pulled off of the car and put back on, nothing else should have been out of whack. And you can see there was less camber in the front. So instead of at negative 3.6, I'm now at negative 3.3, negative 3.5. And in the back, I should have been at negative 3, and now I'm at negative 2.5. I should have had negative 1.2 millimeters of toe out, and now I've got negative 3.6 millimeters of toe out. So this thing's like plowing down the track. And you can see it's not symmetric. It's whacked. There's negative 1.2 on one side and negative 2.4 on the other side. So it's completely out of alignment. And then the back, which is the part that they did mess with, that was way out as well. I wanted to have a total of 3.5 millimeters of toe in the back, and I had 8.1 millimeters of toe in the back. So I would have been basically dragging my front tires and my rear tires on the back straight. This is not good. So I said, okay, I was only planning for you guys to deal with my rear axle, but go ahead and set this thing back up, get it back to the black values. And they went ahead and set everything back up and got it back to the black values, took the car out, took it to the track. And that was that nasty weekend that I showed you guys where it was raining and there's multiple accidents and it was just a big mess. So at the end of that weekend, I should have had like 8 sessions, and I ended up getting like maybe 3. And of those, most of them were half wet, half dry. And my best time was a 2:22.84. So not much better than the lap time I had back before all this stuff was put on. So I just kind of chalked it up as a bad track weekend, bad conditions, and didn't really think much of it. But now I had time to get the car back to Mike. So after that track weekend, I took the car back to Mike. He put it on his alignment rig. And Mike's real careful about making sure his equipment's calibrated. He double checks everything. He has, dual camber gauges, so he can verify that his alignment rig is set properly. He throws it up on his alignment rig and comes up with these pink values. Basically, I was running that wet weekend with not enough camber in the front, not enough camber in the rear. Instead of being 1.2 millimeters of toe out, I was actually 0.5 millimeters of toe in on my front. And instead of being 3.5 millimeters of toe in the back, I was only at 1.5 millimeters. So basically, I was running pretty much square in the front. I didn't have any toe out, so my turn in wasn't good. I didn't have enough toe in the back, so that was not good for my turning ability and rotation ability. And then the worst thing was I was running with not enough camber. And I know that when I don't run with enough camber on this car, especially if I'm running hard, it's going to cord on the outside of the tire. And so that I was like, okay, it looked at the tires and they weren't corded yet, but I already ran a couple of weekends with these. And so Mike set the car back to the black values, took it back to the track in February. The first day of the weekend was hot. I took it out with the same tires, ran. I was able to get the car down to like in the 220s and consistently get 220s, so that felt good. But then at the end of the day, I look at my front tires, and once again, they're corded on the outside. What I believe is that basically I didn't have enough camber in the car because of the shop that set it up with the wacky values. I think their equipment wasn't calibrated properly. So they ended up not dialing enough camber in. I took it out and ran it on that weekend with the wet, dry track sessions, and basically, corded the outside of my tires. The cords weren't showing yet, but they were wearing that way. And then I took the car back to the track in February with the proper camber settings, ran it in the heat for one day, and that pretty much just wasted the tires. So took those tires off, put new tires on. A cold front came in that Saturday night. We came back to the track that Sunday morning. It was in the 50s. I had new tires. I knew my alignment was good, and I hit the track, and that's when I had a breakthrough. So after spending 8 months reprogramming my brain and installing a bunch of mods to my car and then learning how to use these on track, I'm now at a place where I can actually match Randy's time on track. And it didn't come easy. It was full of trial and error, but I'm to a place now to where I'm able to match his time And so let me take you through the couple track weekends that we had where we eventually were able to get this lap time down to what Randy did back in June of 2024. Okay, it's Sunday morning. Cold front just came through. It's 50 some degrees. I've got new Hoosier R7s on the car. It's not wet out. It's kind of moist, but it's not wet. We're hauling into turn 1 here, and Reggie's ahead of me. He's going to punch a hole through the air with his 992 and then let me go around him. So that was a nice pass to launch me into turn 2. Come around turn 2, I'm trying to keep it as fast as I can so I can get into turn 3 with the highest velocity and then brake right here at 4. And then carry the speed through all of these S's as best I can. I'm trying to set up on 7 here so I can jump over the curb. And let's see, I missed the curb, so didn't get that right. Come around 8, and you can see they removed the curb so I can do the proper line. Don't want to get bounced here on 9. Come out onto the green, drop down into 10. Try to keep the speed up. Trying to maximize, get about 132 here going into turn 11. Come around this without screwing anything up. Trying to get back on the power as early as possible. 156. That's really good. There's a north wind, a slight north wind, so that's helping us there. Track out onto the green. Trying not to screw up turns 13 and 14 here. Need to keep this nice and clean. I kept it in on 14, coming into 15 now, trying to do that shallow line like Randy did, and then track out onto the green here. You can see I've got about a $170 in the bank right there, and I want to keep that. So I've got to push hard on the carousel here. And you can see it's increasing as I go around the carousel. Now I want to straddle 19. I don't want to screw this up. Trying to make this corner as long and shallow as possible. Still got about a $180 in the bank. And now let's see if I can get around this without screwing it up. Okay, so I know I've got a good one here. Hit the finish line. And there we go. Finally cracked into the 219s. That's a hard one to get to. So I finally got to it. Okay, now we're Sunday afternoon. I've been cracking 19s for a couple sessions here, and my confidence is getting a lot higher. I'm feeling the aero. I know how far I can push, and I know that going into 3 and 4 is the vein in the mine that I need to keep mining. Every time I push hard, going into 2 and then into 3, the car sticks and I just get more and more green on the lap timer. So right here, I know I can carry this deeper and deeper into the S's, and that's what I'm trying to do. And every time I do it, you can see the lap timer turns green. So I've just been mining that thing all day, trying to get as much as I can out of it. Trying to hit the curb on 7. I hit the curb on 7 there, so things are looking pretty good. I'll go around 8 here, and you can see now I'm up to a $113. So this is looking really good. I'm probably going to get into the low 18s here. Need to keep the speed up around 11 and not screw this up. So I'm going to try to keep this as smooth and wide as possible. And now here I am. I'm right around a $115. Going down the back straight. Max out at 156. That's real good. Okay, so now I still got that $120 in the bank, and I'm trying to not screw it up here, so I don't want to screw it up on 13 and 14. I come around 13, and I'm screwing it up. I'm going too wide. And then I go too wide on 14, so I think, oh man, I'm totally screwing this up. And you can see that I've lost a bunch of time right there. So now I'm under 1, and I'm thinking, oh, I'm screwing this up. So then I know I need to push hard in the carousel here. That's the only place I can make it up. And I know this car can hold in the carousel with the aero. So I'm just pushing harder and harder, looking at the lap timer, And finally it starts going up. Now I need to keep 19 wide. I've got a $120 in the bank again here, so this is looking good. I can't screw up 20. Need to get through 20. And it's going away. And now I'm down to like less than a second. And, barely made it. 218. 218.5. So at that point, I was real happy. I was like, okay, put the car away. Go home. You've had a good weekend. You made it into the 18s. Real happy with that result. Okay, so now let's see how I do against Randy at each checkpoint. So hopefully I've made some inroads here. So here we come down the front straight. We're coming up into turn 1, and let's see what our max is. On the front straight, 135, 137. So despite all the aero stuff I've got on the car, I'm still able to maintain a good speed on that front straight compared to the clean car. So now let's go around into turn 2. So turn 2 is where I've been working to try to keep my foot down. And let's see if I'm getting closer to his speeds here. Yeah, 97 versus 93. Okay, so I got an advantage now. So that's good. I'm getting some, working my way up to keep my foot down through turn 2. Okay, so now this is where I've been really working, trying to get max speed at turn 3. Okay, so now 116 versus 109. So that's been paying off. Once again, he doesn't have the aero, he doesn't have the MCS. He's bouncing all over the place. You can see how quiet the car is now with the MCS. Hit turn 4. I'm trying to keep the speed through there, and you can see, yes, I'm at 100 compared to 88. So I'm maintaining the speed into turn 4. So that's great. Now I need to keep carrying that speed into the other turns on the S's. So here we're at 5. I'm at 84.77. So that's great. And now we go around 6 and into 7. And 7's where I was trying to jump the curb like what Randy does. And you'll see him come around and then line the curb up and just go right over the top of it. And so now I'm getting closer to that curb, and I'm at 75, 74. So we're about the same here. So this is when things slow down. Now the aero and the MCS isn't going to really help. And this is where Randy really shines, is in all of this low speed stuff. And sure enough, he's at 57, I'm at 50. So now he has a 7 mile an hour advantage on me going around 8. And then into 9. 9 is where Randy was jumping the curb despite not having the MCS. And I'm lining up to jump the curb as well. And you'll see how much quieter the car is with the MCS now. We're at the same speed here. And let's see if Randy is jumping. Yeah, he didn't get thrown too bad. So now we go into turn 10. And now we're back on the high speed stuff, and I've got a 2 mile an hour advantage, so that's good. We're both cutting over the curb. And now this is the straight where he was crushing me on the speed. He was getting up to like 133, and I'm at 132 now, so that's good. He's a little deeper into this braking zone, but that's great that I'm at the same speed as him now in this short straight. So this is where we go around turn 11, and he's getting the car pointed down track more. He's at 35, and I'm at 42, so I have a speed advantage here, but he's going to get the nose around and rotate the car quicker. So you'll see he doesn't even get out on the green. He's got the car pointed down the track. I had to go out on the green. Okay, so now, once again, we're working with aero on my car and just factor aero on his car. So the question is, can I still get the same speed as him on the back straight? 156, 156. So the answer is, on that day, yes. And I'm a little deeper. I'm at the 150 meter point, and we're about ready to go into brakes, and he's a little deeper than that. Okay, so then we come through the braking zone. So now this is where I start screwing everything up. So, and once again, low speed stuff. Aero's not going to help. MCS is not going to help. I'm like worried that I'm going to lose all this stuff, the time that I got in the bank, and sure enough, I start screwing up, and he came in tight on 14, came in tight on 15, shallow line. I've been working on that, but he's still executing that much better than me. Then we go into the carousel. So now we get back into the high-speed stuff, and he was really fast on the carousel, faster than any of the other drivers that we looked at. And let's see, at 17, we're at, I'm a little bit faster, 93 to 91. So going into the carousel, into the high-speed, high-grip part, I've got a little bit of advantage. And now watch this. 114, 111. So he's still kicking my ass on the carousel. And now we're going to go through 19. And this is where he didn't straddle. He doesn't know about that. I straddled, try to keep this thing nice and shallow. And there I get my speed advantage back. So I'm at 77, 67. So now we're going to come out and track onto the green together. And he quickly closes this speed gap down. So now we both go out in the green and we go to our max speed on this short straight, 105, 106. So we're back at parity again. So both of us were having troubles going through 20 and not losing our time. And we're going to see how much each of us loses here. So I'm losing time, he's losing time, and then we finally hit the finish line, 2:18.94 and 2:18.59. So I was extremely happy with that result. Okay, so now let's take a look at the time slip plot. So the time slip's on the bottom, and you can see the speeds on the top. And so we're getting real close to each other on the speed now. And if you look at the time slip, it kind of tells an interesting story. So it basically shows that on all the high speed pieces, if we go to the first checkpoint, you can see he got around turn 1, that low speed piece, faster than me. And then we get into the high speed pieces now, and from turn 2 all the way through to the next checkpoint, which is turn 7, I had an advantage. So I was able to get through all of those S's faster. And that's the added confidence of the MCS, the downforce from the aero, and then working on trying to get my speed from 3 to 4 faster. And so that's all paying off. And then you get into the slow speed stuff now at turn 8, and he takes it all back. So he gets through that. And then at the next checkpoint, you can see now we pop through 9, and he's taken a whole bunch of the time back. And then we get into the high speed piece again, where we go down through 10, and you can see that's pretty much almost level. I'm getting some time on him there. And then we get to the next checkpoint, and we're at the end of the back straight. And I get a big chunk of time out of him at the very end there, which is that braking zone. And then we get into the low speed pieces where I was screwing up. And once again, he takes up all the time back. And so by the time we get to the next checkpoint, which is the high speed piece of the carousel, he's taken all that time back from me. And that's his autocross background. He really knows how to go through these low speed turns like magic. He can find the perfect line through these things. And I was totally screwing up on 13 and 14. And so you can see he took all the time back at that point. And then we get back to 19, and 19 is the one where I straddled and he didn't. I went as wide and as shallow as possible on that. And then I get a whole bunch of time back at that point. And so, you can see the real difference now is all the high speed pieces with the added confidence in the car. I'm able to get a better, faster time through those. And then all the low speed pieces, he's able to, well, the aero doesn't help at all, and the MCS isn't helping much. He's able to take all the time back. So it'll be real interesting when we get him back in the car and give him the tools that we have now and see if he keeps those slow speed pieces in his pocket and then he adds all the high speed pieces. And, I don't know, he might be, he's going to be in the 16s. He might be even lower than that. So we'll see what we end up with. So now let's do a quick check of my time against Ted, who is the pro driver at Dundon that helped design all these components. So he knows how to drive this car to the max, and he's very comfortable in this car, but he didn't know COTA. He had never driven on COTA. So he had to learn COTA in a day, and then he came back the next day and turned a 217.23. So now this is the same car with all the same components on it, same tires, and a pro driver that understands the car against me, who's an amateur trying to learn the car. And so the time slip plot's on the bottom, and you can see at the first checkpoint, which is at turn 3, we're pretty much at parity. And then from 3 all the way to 8, he was carrying the speed through the S's much better than me. So he took a whole bunch of time out of me there. If you look at the speed plots, he's packing a lot more speed through the S's than me. And so even though I've made great strides there, there's still more that I can extract out of the car. And so that's why I'm going to keep mining that as much as I can and try to get up to his speed there. And then you can see from 8 all the way to the end of the back straight, I was gaining time on him, and especially on the braking zone at the end. So I've got that nailed. And then after that is where I started screwing up. So going through 13, 14, 15, he took all the time, just like Randy did. He took a whole bunch of time out of me. And then from that point on, through the carousel and through 19, it looks like we were pretty much parity again. So I've got to not screw up 13, 14, 15. And I had other laps where I didn't screw that up. And then I need to continue getting faster and faster out of 4. And that's where I need to work next time, is just continue pushing that speed deeper and deeper into the S's. It's going to be interesting to see where Randy ends up with this car when we get him in and see how far he pushes this lap time. But we'll see out at the track next time, and hopefully I'll be continuing to push these laps down lower.